Hey guys, hopefully that you're super excited about what's about to happen when it comes to our Ed series. Welcome. If it's the first time that you've ever been on this, welcome back to the interviews where we can bring people to you live. Our whole goal in this Edge interview series is to bring people of success, people that have been out there in the hunt, been out there and have succeeded in some way. And our whole goal is to bring them to you. Our audience can be anybody, but what we specialize in is our audience being teenagers, being somewhere in between 8 years old and 22 years old, so young adults. Because if I could go back and talk to myself at that age, I would love to tell them some of those things. And we've got a special guest here today. We're working on some technical things. I think he's on this, but we got to move him up into a panelist, do some different shifts around. But if you're out there, stay tuned because our goal is to introduce to you some of the greatness that's out there. I'll introduce to you our Edge series that comes from the Life Company. Edge series is an audio. It comes in once a month, and that you can have these things every day, every month that come to you, and you can listen to them. And our special guest is a gentleman by the name of Jordan Swanson. And let me give you a little bit. This shifts because a lot of times we bring in people that are a little bit older, a little bit farther along in success, and they want to talk to somebody at Jordan's age. Now we're bringing to you somebody that is in the battle, someone that is live, walking through the teenage years. And I talked to his dad, and then I talked to him, and he is a perfect example of what we need to do, a perfect example of what we call boldness. And we're going to talk about that today. So strap in, be ready, all right? And also, if this is your first time or you've been on this before, I want to remind you, down at the bottom, there's a question and answer, a comment. Add some questions because at the last 20 minutes, we want to see Jordan squirm a little bit. We want to see him get a little bit big-eyed because you guys have thrown out some questions to him about different things that come along with the topic, different things that we bring up and say, so I'm in this situation. How do I handle it? Hey, I've seen this. How do I handle it? And that's why we're here. So stay tuned. All right. So, Mr. Jordan.
Hello.
How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I am doing awesome. All right. I'm looking so forward to this today. And I know there's a lot of viewers here that are watching this and get ready to gather a ton of information from what we have together and have a great conversation. All right. Well, I didn't usually in these interviews, usually what happens is we have a huge intro that says a lot of the credentials of the individual that we're about to go and speak with. But I didn't want to do that with you because I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your mom and dad, your brother, and where do you live?
Well, I grew up in Davison, Michigan, and I have an older I have an older brother. He's about a year and a half older. He's graduating this year. For the most part, for the first 10 years of my life, we grew up in Davison. Then we moved 20 minutes away to Fenton. We had some property here, so we built here. It's kind of in the back of the woods, right up my alley. I love the outdoors, for sure. That's one thing. I love to do fish, hunt, camp. My brother, he's graduating this year, which seems kind of crazy, to be honest with you, just because it just doesn't seem real, the fact that he's actually taken off. But it's definitely – I'm excited to see what he does in his life because I know that whatever he's going to do, he's just going to kill it and be the greatest at it. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Yeah.
How old are you, Jordan?
I'm 15 years old.
15 years old. Wow. Are you ready for this interview? Being only 15 years old, I would consider you already successful, but are you ready?
I think so. Yes.
You're looking forward to it. Might some of the people here that are watching this and know your dad? Who's your dad? And tell us a little bit about your dad and mom.
Well, my dad's Chris Swanson, and so you've probably heard of him over my mom. She's just there to keep him under control, but he does a lot of speaking and through life leadership and different things. Speaks all over the country. My mom is wonderful. She's a travel agent now. She just got that job. But she raised me and my brother, which is currently raising, but she has raised my brother and I, is a huge responsibility, and it's definitely given her a run for her money. So But yeah, my dad, he does a lot of speaking. He's does a ton more than speaking. He's a police officer, undersheriff for Genesee County in Michigan. So yeah.
Well, the only reason I had you talk about that, Mr. Jordan, is because I know that Chris is probably watching this, and also he's been an interviewee of me several times, and we've talked about some tough subjects. And it's great to see what happens when somebody is in a home like that, where you see that next generation move forward, and Jordan's a great example of that. And we're going to get to that subject later on. But our subject right now is boldness. Boldness, the strength, and I can go through tons of different definitions of boldness. Jordan, what does boldness mean to you?
Well, boldness is something that is very, very important to me, and it should be for everyone. It's, to me, it's your determination, you pick something, you find something you want to do, a goal or something, and you tell yourself, I'm going to do it regardless of what happens, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of anyone telling you can't do it. And it's not wrong to kind of hear their opinion on it, but it's your determination. You're not going to back down whatsoever. It's you don't care what happens. You stand out and you just kill it. That's what it is to me.
All right. Well, you've hit a whole bunch of subjects right in that little definition of boldness that we're going to hit, because a lot of times, for me, when I was your age, when I was 15 years old, I was just coming in as a freshman in high school. I was learning a little bit. I was a little bit timid, but I was also growing up a lot. And I know that there's a whole bunch of our viewers right now that may be right around your age, you're about to come into your age, you're just coming out of your age. And that's very difficult. When you said standing for something, and I wrote it down, determination, talking to yourself, stand out. How let's just kind of hit it. Standing out, is there forces that prevent you from standing out as a teenager right now?
It comes a lot with what other people have set their standards to like the normal, what they think you should be, and that can really influence us in a bad way, thinking like if we're here then we're good enough. But it's not wrong, but if you can exceed that through your boldness, and you stand out, and you just kill it. And by standing out, some people can look at it in a positive way. Others can kind of neglect it and almost kind of try to tear you down about it, but you just have to suck it up and keep going.
So you said something, set your standards. Can you dive into that a little bit? What do you mean by setting your standards? What does that mean to Mr. Jordan?
Well, setting your standards, I find, as other people would set them for you. They see you, they think this is what you can accomplish, and they might tell you that, and you just can't listen to them. You have to, know what you're capable of, and just push that to its limit. Because if people are telling you this is all you're good for, then sooner or later you're gonna try to believe it, and then you're just gonna like decrease in your growth in whatever aspect that might be. So if they're setting your standard for you, then that can really throw off your full potential, which obviously isn't the best thing.
Exactly. And now, along with that, setting standards, as a teenager, as 15 years old, is there a lot of things out there? Because we hear it, and we hear it bad from the press. Maybe it's inflated, maybe not. And that's kind of where I want to ask you: is there a lot of distractions as a 15-year-old?
Well, of course, there's plenty of distractions. There's things to like take your mind off of it. Of course, like our social media is Netflix. I mean, trust me, I'm all over social media and Netflix, but it can really slow you down, and you can slowly convince yourself that it's not as important to execute what your plan was. You're just like, I'll just do this instead. And it can totally throw off your potential, which isn't what your initial plan was.
So you said that social media, Netflix, video games, I'm sure video games were really coming in when your dad and I were teenagers. They were really coming into fruition. They were really happening, but they weren't what they are today. But that doesn't mean they weren't distractions. They were just something that we did. Obviously, we watched a lot of TV, sports, some of those different things. Some of them aren't distractions. Some actually may build you a little bit. Is How much is there such a thing as some of those good things can be too much?
Well, of course. I've found myself. I'm not saying I'm not like a victim of any of this, but have found myself. I've started playing a game on my PlayStation, and then before I know it, my mom calls me up for dinner, and it's been like 2.5 hours, and I don't even know where the time went. And it totally just, I wouldn't say I wasted that time just because I was relaxing, but that time's just gone, and it, just like that takes off. So you can easily get wrapped up into that stuff and just focus, and then you don't even know where the time goes. And that's when it becomes a problem.
Have you ever set yourself in standards? Have you ever set yourself to a point that says, I'm only going to play it for this amount of time? Or how have you been able to figure out what to do to prevent yourself from, it's no different as an adult. If you guys are out there and someone's told you, oh, why are you playing those video games all the time? We're distracted as much as anybody. All right. And so young men, young women, Jordan, that's going through this, how have you been able to say, I'll only do it for an hour? How have you been able to prevent that distraction?
Well, I am a person who likes to visualize things. So I will legitimately write my schedule down on paper, minute by minute, of what I need, what I want to accomplish. So I'll say, I get home at this time, I'll change, I'll go relax for this amount of time, watch something on TV. This time I'm going to do homework, dinner, and then I can have the rest of the night to just do whatever I want. And once you see it and figure out that you have a solid hour and a half, 2 hours of just whatever you want to do, it's a lot easier as opposed to just adding, 5 more minutes wouldn't kill or 10 more minutes wouldn't kill, but that quickly adds up. So once I've written it down on paper right before school lets out, I come home, do it, and I don't find myself getting wrapped up in anything. So
that's awesome. So you've learned the ability to schedule your time. And if you're out there listening, this is a huge, huge point that most of us don't learn till years and years down the road. And I know several people in their 40s and 50s and even 60s that don't know how to schedule their time. They don't know how to look at their time through a daily process. And what Mr. Jordan just said, he gets free time that he can spend doing the things he wants because he puts his priorities into a daily schedule, and then he's got plenty of time to go out there and do things. So we're going to shift a little bit. We're going to come back to some of that first point on boldness. How important is it, Jordan, for you to stand for something?
Very important. Unless, I guess that's circumstantial depending on what you're standing for. But whatever you stand for, I believe you have to be all in or all out. So if you're going to stand for something, then you commit to it. You can't back out at the last minute. You just have to do it. And I think it plays a huge role on your reputation, because if you say one thing and do the other, it's just, no one's going to take your word for anything you say in the future. Say you're like, hey, I'm going to do this. They're not going to believe it until they see it based off previous experiences of you committing to something and then just not executing it. So I think it really hurts your reputation if you don't.
So what you said is that if you stand for something, now you're going to represent it. So when you stand out there and say, this is how I believe, and whatever it may be, it could be the score of a game, it could be your faith, it could be anything, that you stand for something. But if someone approaches you, talks to you about that, and you back down from that, that affects your representation. Well, I'm sure that there's some listeners and people that are watching this that have maybe been through that. oh, I believe that. And then when someone approached them, they cowered away or they walked away from that. Can that I think you even told us this, so I'm going to either repeat it or you can repeat this. You said that that can be cleaned up but it's going to take example. Is that correct? If you backed away from a representation, people are not going to believe you, but then as they watch you, you can clean that back up?
Absolutely. But it really it's a real setback because it's harder to regain that over time because it's not one thing can't define it, but it's just over time you just have to build that back, and it's difficult because it's consistency and it's every little thing that you do. You have to be legitimate with it, and you can't back out from it, whether it's like, hey, can you help me out with this? Yeah, sure. And then you don't do it. Maybe there is a legitimate reason and you explain that, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about. We're talking about what, like, if you're actually doing your word. When you say yes to something or no to something, you're giving your word for that. And you're not doing it is breaking your word. I heard this from one of my dad's friends who is very wise, and he said, people can take everything from you except one thing, and that's your word. You have to give them your word. And that's and when you put it in that perspective, it really makes a deep concept to giving your word to someone. And I think that if you do give your word to someone, you can't back out from it, unless there's different circumstances, of course. But for the most part, once you give them your word, that's that, and you just have to do it or not do it, frankly.
Jordan, you're profound. The whole thought process I had as you started into that was the idea of wisdom, and you brought it up. A very wise man said, your word is your worth, and when you break your word, people start to back away from you. They second guess what's possible because you did not stand for what you said you stood for. So I based on that thought process, that wisdom is experience. Wisdom is learning, being through circumstances and knowing how they work. When you stand for something, when it becomes your representation, are you open to other people's opinions?
Well, you always have to hear everyone's opinion on it, but that doesn't mean you have to necessarily listen to what they're telling you to do. So it's easy to try to do something, think it's 100%, there's no flaws in it whatsoever, but if there's people who point out something, not in necessarily a rude or harsh way, just say, listen, you're kind of iffy on this part, then yes, you can listen to them. But if there's people that are just trying to discourage you, tell you can't do it, just be kind of a jerk to you about it, that's where you just have to say there's no value in listening to what they have to say about it. But if there's people that come to you and say, hey, listen, you're kind of lacking in this area and this area, but if you get that all squared away, you'll be good to go. And that's where you should listen to them and get their input. But I believe that is strictly a matter of who people are. If they're like close people with you that have the same morals and beliefs and stuff, and they say, I think you're doing this wrong, and then they just come to you in a respectful way, then that's perfect. That's what you want. You want people to tell you your mistakes so you can improve on them. But there's a way to do it and a way to respond to them that very few people actually do. It's usually kind of in a rude way, or people get stubborn that can be a problem, because you get too stubborn with what you do. You still have to be open to what other people, their opinions, and determine whether it's legitimate or relevant or not.
Wow, there is so much. You just told us both sides. Because what happens in our life is if you stand for something and someone comes in to question you, that means that they're standing for something else on the other side. And if you're close to them, they are going to be close to you. that doesn't mean that no. If it's as you said, some people have just want to discourage you. Some people have been through some rough times in their life, and they're just going to spew on you. They're going to just take their life out on you, and that's not good. That's some of those things that wisdom says you run fast and far. I don't mean turn around and run, but to some things that's true to that. And as Jordan was saying, if sometimes you have to be open to their thoughts so that you can gain wisdom, but also our prayer is that they're open to you so you can create that conversation. When you stand bold for something, people see it. People want to be. That's very attractive for other people because there's not a lot of people that stand out of the crowd because they believe a certain way. And that's what we're talking about. So if you're young out there, if this is your first time on the Edge interview series, we're interviewing Jordan Swanson. And Jordan's talking about being bold, boldness as a teenager. Some of the most difficult times in all of our life is being a teenager. You're kind of growing through a whole bunch of different things. You're trying to figure out, people are asking you these questions, what you going to do when you grow up? And all of us that are older are going, I want to go back to being a teenager. So there's a whole bunch of different things going on. But when boldness hits and we start to see and believe in a certain way, then we start to set standards. Jordan, I'm going to ask you a question here. Is there certain things that you stand for? Can you give us an example, maybe you or people, maybe your friends, maybe the people that you hang out with, what do they stand for?
Well, one thing that our entire family stands for is we all have a faith in Jesus Christ. And I haven't necessarily gotten in the circumstance of people putting my faith to the test, but I would say, all right, so here's a quick story. A few weeks ago, we went on a cruise, and it was like 11 at night, and I was just kind of wandering the cruise, just having a good time, and I came across the library, and so I was just checking it out just to see what the ship was like, and I found a Bible. So I took a pen, and can you still hear me?
We're good.
Okay. So I took a pen and I started writing in the Bible verses for salvation, to like the process and verses and stuff to be saved and go to heaven, have faith in Jesus Christ. And as I did that, right as I finished and I set the Bible up open to that page. And well, when I wrote the verses, I went through to the verse in the Bible, highlighted it, wrote a few notes about that specific verse. And when I was finished, I put it over on a little desk where people just sit and can look up. It's got like an aerial view of the inside of the ship. And I just set it there open. And lo and behold, within like 3-4 minutes, 2 girls walk in and they just sit down. They're just having a good time on the cruise and they see it. And one girl, and they have no idea, obviously, that I did this. So I'm just sitting toward the back of the library, and it's a small little library, and I can see them and hear them. And one girl, she picks it up and she starts reading it. And she didn't go through all of it, but she was almost mocking it. And it was almost like, to them, it wasn't a big deal. And to me, it was just it hurt inside, honestly. But I was like, I'm not gonna go up there and hide the Bible or something like dumb like that. But I was just kind of listening to what they had to say. So there's 2 girls, one girl kept talking, and the other was like, just kind of put that down, or why are you even reading this? And so I just felt the need to have to say something. So the one girl read like the first or second verse that I wrote down, like she's reading what I wrote. And after she read it, I speak up. I'm like, do you believe in that? And then they both kind of turn and look at me. And for a few seconds, it was just really awkward because it really turned the whole vibe of the room. And the girl next to her who wasn't reading it was like, I go to church, so yes. And so they just kind of set the Bible down and left. But to me, it didn't seem like a big deal to them. They were just put in an awkward circumstance. But to me, it almost hurt inside because they were mocking what I did. And the fact that the one girl spoke up and was like, I go to church, so I believe it. And it's kind of like, you don't really necessarily have to believe in it because you go to church. She didn't really have the right perspective on it. And that's what I mean. I get kind of hurt inside when they started mocking that. So that kind of hurt.
Well, I tell you what, Jordan, I am so proud of you. At 15 years old, I would have never done something like that because I would have been the mocker, or I would have been the person that just kind of seen the book. I wouldn't have taken it. I would have set it up on the desk, but I wouldn't have the boldness to stay by my convictions. I wouldn't have had that. And that's very, very powerful. I tell you what, from my perspective of the years that I've been around successful people, I believe that those two girls are still thinking about those passages, and thinking about, as you think about that situation and how it seemed like it contradicted the things that you stood for. You stood bold, and what happens is they're wondering, they're questioning, and I bet the next time, as today is Sunday, maybe they went to church, or at least one of them went to church, they're wondering.
I sure hope so. I've prayed for them, so
Amen.
Maybe one day we'll reunite in heaven, but so who knows?
That is awesome. I so much appreciate seeing the example of boldness, and that was great. And you probably, I don't know if you felt that was an act of boldness, but that's like a Medal of Honor winner right there. Courage happens in the moment. We may call it bold, but it's courage in the moment when everything's telling you, because I'm sure. Let me ask you this: was there a little internal struggle to open up that Bible and write in it? Was there a little bit of internal struggle to highlight things and set it out there? Was there any struggle like that?
Yeah, because I grabbed the Bible and I searched the entire library and couldn't find a pen or pencil. So honestly, I was like, well, I guess I'll just open it to a random verse, and maybe by chance someone will just kind of glance down and catch that verse. But I was like, I have to find a pen. So I legitimately searched like levels and finally found a pen. I ended up going all the way back to our room, getting a pen, coming all the way back, down 3 floors, and then writing all that stuff in there. So it would have been easy if I could have just whipped open the Bible to like a good verse and left it there. But I just felt that I had to just go get a pen, because I was like, I can't just back out now. It's a genius idea, and I just have to execute it. So
I love that. It was a genius idea. Yeah, I thought of it. It's a genius idea. Whenever you're bold, it's instance of genius. It's instance where God opens up your heart and he says, hey, these two need some help. Or you never know. Sometimes you just never know where the fruit's going to come from. You'll plant the seed. You may even bring the water, but sometimes the harvest is years to come, or maybe somebody else, without Jordan knowing, came up to that Bible, or maybe cruises down. Maybe after this cruise ship, years down the road, someone opens up that Bible and there they find some scripture written down and some things highlighted, and it opens up their heart. And that is so good. You know, the pursuit. You said something. Boldness is not easy. Sometimes difficult, huh?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So sometimes it takes some time to strengthen that. How, maybe this is a question that you can answer. How do you strengthen your boldness? How do you strengthen your conviction?
That comes with experience, because that's how I see it. Because after that whole situation, when they took off, I was just sitting there and I just started playing cards. And it honestly, though they were just kind of like, as I said before, kind of mocking it, just making a joke of it, I was like, I inside, after further thinking about it, I was glad that I actually took a step, because it wasn't for those girls is why I did it, because they came after, but it was for anyone to do it. So for all I know, although they mocked it, maybe 6 people have opened the Bible and started going to church from that. I have no idea, but that's not for me to know. It's for I didn't do it so I could find out. I did it for their eternal salvation.
Amen to that. That's very, very good. And that is such a good example. Guys and gals, this is a 15-year-old. This is Mr. Jordan Swanson, and he is a perfect example of the people that we bring to this Edge interview series. Someone that's bold. We're talking about boldness. We're talking about the idea that there is some convictions out there. We're talking about the idea that inside of you, you have some thoughts and some feelings, and by getting around the right people and getting around the right understanding, and as Mr. Jordan just said, wisdom and action and experience, you start to grow and you start to do that. Mr. Jordan, so one of the things that you and I talked about a while ago, and I want to bring so how does hobbies, youth groups, or youth organizations or sports, does that play in on conviction or play in on boldness?
Well, of those things you listed, I think that youth group would have the biggest influence on it because that, depending on, I guess, what that day of youth group was, could initially be over boldness, which obviously that's going to strengthen your boldness even more. So I think youth group over playing a sport would probably have a bigger influence on boldness. I mean, I guess that's circumstantial. Maybe it's depending on what sport or what the game was. But for me, I find youth group being the most influential in my boldness because we have these groups that break off, called life groups. Many of you might know this, and because many churches do it. And what it is, if you don't know, it's groups of kids, guys your age, and you break off and you discuss what the pastor or youth pastor just talked about. So you discuss it amongst yourselves, and it's good accountability for it, which I find that a lot really easy because these people next to you have the same view on it as you. So you're not trying to you're not alone in the situation. You're all working together, being accountable, and it's incredible for me. I love them.
So one of the things that when I asked a few people if they knew Jordan Swanson, they said, "Is he the guy? Is he the young man that plays guitar?" So how does guitar play in there? Or maybe the question is this: being bold, does that help you in something like guitar?
It definitely helps my determination because there's been times where even on the smallest scale, I've been trying to learn a song, and it's just not happening, and you just want to smash your guitar, but the boldness and determination will kind of help you to just keep at it and just work through it. But that's just on a small scale. But so I think it does subconsciously help, but I won't necessarily say when I play guitar, I'm working on my boldness, but I do think it plays a huge part in it when I'm trying to learn something new.
Does it keep you determined to finish? Does that, one of the things that you said right off the bat when you were defining boldness, you said that's determination. Do you think that carries over into your sports, your hobbies, even into your youth group, standing and asking questions, being bold in those questions?
Absolutely. I think it plays a huge part because if you're not going to stick with something, then if you're not going to invest in it, you're not going to get results from it because you can't just buy your way in life. You have to experience things, and things you have to experience them over time, and you develop different skills over time, like boldness. You develop all over time. So that really sticking to it is very, very important. And if you just if you start doing something and it's just not happening, maybe that's just not your niche. Maybe you need to find something else, but don't give up at the first sight of error. Just keep at it, whatever that may be. Maybe it's a sport or an instrument, but on a small scale. So
Amen to that. You're awesome, Jordan. All right. So if this is the first time that you've ever listened to our Edge interview series, what our whole goal in this is to put you in front of people of success, putting you in front of people that are not one of those that said, I've never had a problem. It's people that have been through some problems, been through different things, and they've come out the other side, and they just want to speak to people there. As is with our interviewee today, Mr. Jordan Swanson, he wants to talk to people his age so they don't have to go through some of the things that he's been through. But also, we want to put you in front of successful people because our whole goal is to get you plugged into the Edge audio series that comes with the Life Company. Someone probably invited you. Someone asked you to listen to this because, number one, they just want you to get around successful people because we can all learn and grow. And we're going to take a little a break away from this interview to watch a quick commercial that we've done that is our interview series, and then we'll come back. And if you see down at the bottom of your screen, there's a question and answer and a chat. Ask some questions of this young man. Remember, I want some bullets that I can nail him with, that I can hit him hard and ask him some tough questions. So as we listen to this commercial, as questions come up in your mind, put them down. And here we're going to segue over into this commercial.
What if?
So you said at 10 years old, you already knew that it would be Notre Dame. What's so cool about Notre Dame? When did you want to be a fighter pilot? So what is a leader? What are some of the categories that I can become an entrepreneur in?
You could.
So were you always this intense and serious about everything in life? For our young listeners out there, tell us what MMA is.
Find something that you're passionate about and dig into it.
Hand your children.
That's my whole mission in life, is to inspire others to become their very best.
How do you set it up so that you're not bullied? Is there a way to prevent bullying from even being initiated?
No matter what it is, when you pour your heart into something that's positive, then it's hard to let negative influences affect you.
The edge on life.
It's hunger. You have to want it more than anything else in this world.
And what I want a lot of the people here, watching this to know is that at any time, that one decision can change everything. Even if you don't know what it's going to entail or what the outcome is, like deep down in your gut, if you know that you're not doing what you're meant to do, you can change it and everything's going to be okay.
That you didn't have.
I believe that when you have someone who has results, who believes in you, it can carry you a long, long way.
You did your very best, failed to achieve your dream, you made the dream happen, and then it was taken away from you. How do you deal with that afterwards? And the way I dealt with it was in the knowing that I gave my very best every single day. Nobody out there can take that part away from you.
The Edge interview series.
Have you ever been scared? So have you ever put this out there? You have the teams, you have the guys, you have the group, the camaraderie. But what is the importance of a coach, a mentor, through that process? But at what age did you start into this process? At what age did you say, I'm going to go out and grab a puppy and put a sled behind it and go?
Shake it off and, PDCA, plan, do, check, and adjust.
What does it feel like to represent the United States in the Olympics?
Just leaning on God to get you through it.
But what you have to do is take control of your mind, your body, and your spirit.
A person of character learns to do right.
Don't fear failure.
Always look at the positive side.
And I think that's one of the things that young people at times don't get. Whether you're kids, whether you're teenagers, even young adults, is that your life is a series of decisions.
So go out there and lead the way. Be kids who are going to make a difference in this broken world, and show them hope. Show them confidence. Show them faith in Christ. Show them what it looks like to lead and to lead well.
So, gang, that was a little bit of the clips from our past interviews, and this one sets above a lot of those because we have Mr. Jordan Swanson. Jordan comes in at 15 years old. He's talking about being bold as a teenager. Some of those things that I wish I could have done, he's talking about today. He's talking about those simple things that now I may look back and go, man, that was so simple. But sometimes those things can be difficult. Sometimes those things can be hard at certain ages. And Mr. Jordan is talking about 15 years old. Yes, he has a great, maybe we'll hit that right now. So tell us a little bit how important it is to have a mentor, a coach in your life.
I think that, well, for me, my mentor, I would say, would be my dad. And he does a really good job because he knows when to tell me, hey, you might want to change this, but he also knows to say, or to just say, I'll let him do it, and I know that it's not going to hurt him when he doesn't accomplish it. So what I'm saying is he knows when to let go and just let me learn by experience, and that's where it becomes really important, because he can sit me down and he can just go at me for an hour on what I need to do, how I need to do it, and then tell me this. Just say, this is what you need to do, and this is what you're gonna do. He can do that, but until I actually do it, I've done nothing. So I think it's very important that when he says when he says, hey, you might want to fix this, as I think it's important for him also to just step back and let me learn by experience. Whether it works out or doesn't work out, it's still learning by experience, and that's the best way to learn. And he knows, he anticipates, because he's been here too, he knows that if I'm going to do something, if it doesn't work out, he knows it's not going to be a huge disaster. He knows, because if it will, then that's when he speaks up and says, you might want to hold back on this. So that's very important for me, as my dad being a mentor to me. So I think it's very important, for sure.
So do you think, so say someone's out there listening right now, and it's themselves, or they know somebody that doesn't have that dad figure in their life. They don't have somebody that is in their own house, or maybe the situation is a little bit different. Maybe their mom lives in a certain location, their dad lives in a different location, and they're struggling with that. Is there other people out there that could be a mentor for a 15-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 22-year-old? Who would you suggest?
Well, I'm not trying to plug anyone, but my dad does all these courses and stuff. And when I say he's my mentor, of course he's my dad, but he'll talk to me like I'm anyone. And I mean, obviously he invests more in me since I'm his son, but he talks to me in the mentor perspective as opposed to a dad. He still does the dad part, but when I say he's my mentor, I'm talking like I watch his stuff myself. Like I'll go up, watch his videos. I don't even know if he knows that, but I'll watch his videos. And so him talking to the video is him not talking to me. He's talking to everyone out there. So that's where I learn a lot from that. So I know it's important to have I'm really fortunate to have a good father figure like that, but I do watch his stuff and he talks to me like he's mentoring me, not just because he's my dad. So people in that industry like him, this interview course, all these things can be a mentorship in forming your life and guiding you where to go. And all these things are positive things. So.
Right on. And as Jordan says that, when it comes to Chris Swanson, who is his dad, swansonleadership.com is a great way to dive into that and ask those questions. Ask people that you enjoy being around. Ask those people, if you're part of a church, ask the pastor, ask the priest, ask the minister, ask them some of these questions. Hey, I'm going through some struggles. How do I handle this? I'm going through some success. How do I handle it? Because a lot of times when we get older, sometimes we just think in our struggles we need help. And what I've seen in this world, a lot of times when people are going through success, they need the help too, so that it doesn't get beyond them, so that they don't think, this is me all the time, because with success comes some downtime. And you have to realize that there's some heartbreaks and some heartaches, but there's also success that's out there. And Jordan is great when he said, my dad doesn't talk to me like son to dad. He talks to me like mentor to mentee. And that's a whole different level of talking, because now you're enriching. And not that a father doesn't do that, because I like to think that I do that with my kids. But there's a whole different level when someone sees in you what is possible. And that's what Jordan has opened, his dad has opened up to him. He sees in him what's possible, and he lets them get out there and do some things. And then he's there to say, I bet if you tweaked it a little bit here, you'd kill it. Or if you did this a little bit different, this would be your results. So that's what's the power of a mentor. That's the power of someone else out there. So now we've got to our part of our interview that I'm going to hit you with some questions. All right, so I'm going to hit you with some tough questions. And the first one is, all right, you're 15 years old. What's your future?
What's my future? Okay, loaded question.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have like plans as of now. Being in ninth grade, had like huge career plans, but I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone wants to succeed, but I have no initial plans of where I want to go to college, what I have for a career. I have ideas, but I don't have plans. I am currently, I'd say I'm working on still building up different attributes about myself that will help me in the long run to figure out what I'm going to do in my future. Developing different lessons and skills that when it's time to figure out what I'm going to do, all these things that I've built up in the past will tell me this is the decision I'm going to make and really narrow down what I want to do. So the one thing I have looked at as a career is dentistry. So my brother as well. So since he is actually beginning the steps to go to dental school and all these different things, he's working at an orthodontist place, which are very similar. So he's working there, and he's in the environment which is building experience of him being around those things. So for him, once he moves on from that position at the orthodontic place, I anticipate and have plans to make my way in there and be in that same environment. Because if I'm watching my brother as he's taking these steps, he's going to college this year. So if I'm watching him go and he's figuring out what I need to do or what he needs to do, then he can come mentor me and be like, all right, in this, I kind of screwed up here. So since you're coming down the same path, this is what you might want to do this part different. So it back to that kind of mentor thing, as he's going through it, he can really help me as I begin to make my steps to it. So as for my future plans, that's what I am looking to do. But obviously, whatever God has for my future is what I plan to do, whether it is be a dentist or whatever. But as of now, I'm pursuing dentistry in a very vague way, not like I'm going to all these different schools for it, but that's what I've looked into. So until I get the know that it can't happen, that's what I've been pursuing as the career portion of my future.
Right on. We just had a question come in from Mr. Braylon, and he asked, so what's your favorite song to play on the guitar?
My favorite song would probably be Welcome to the Jungle.
That's awesome.
It might say, but at any moment, I could pick up a guitar and jam out to that song. So I fell in love with that song, and ever since then, whenever there's a guitar in my hand, I can't help but play even a half a second of that song, whether it's just a little G run or something from the song or anything. I just have to do it. It's just natural.
Right on. So we know your dad speaks and he travels all over the place. Have you ever gone with him and watched him speak? Have you ever gone to different locations with your dad?
I've gone to a few majors with him through Life Leadership, and that's just like, I guess a major would be just one of the huge productions that Life would put on for all their speakers. And those are incredible experiences. I love those. I had such a great time with all the people there because everyone's in a positive mood there. Everyone has that strive to build their leadership roles and be led themselves. So I love going to those because the environment is what I'm trying to say. The environment is incredible because all of these people that go there are just striving for the same thing as I said. So those are probably the favorite that I go to. I don't go to a ton because usually they interfere with some of our plans because they're not usually local majors. But the ones we go to, I look forward to it as soon as I find out I'm going.
Nice. Well, I've enjoyed them too from my perspective, and it's great to hear that someone that's 15 years old will enjoy that. So the encouragement there is to get around to your environment that you're looking to go towards. And in Jordan, would you consider that in that environment you feel more bold and you get strength of your convictions in the right environments that are positive, that are learning, that are growing?
For sure, because I know that if I'm being bold there at those majors, there's 3,000 other people being bold with me. So it's almost kind of trippy in your mind because you think you're over-exceeding, but there's thousands of other people in the same room that are doing the same thing. And it almost seems, because everyone's standing out in their own different way. Everyone has their own stories that you hear when you go to those. So since everyone has those same ideas, when you're being bold there, it almost kind of cancels out because everyone else there is being bold too, because all those people are striving for the same thing you are, which is that leadership to develop all those different skills to shape your life, which is incredible.
So, are you a reader? And if so, what's your favorite book? What would be a book you'd recommend to people?
A book to recommend. Okay. I don't do too much reading, so that puts me on a small scale. But I have to say, I don't want to keep plugging all of my dad's, all of his products, but he does have a book out, Tin Man to Iron Man, and I read that I think I read it before it came out, just because when I found out he was writing it, it's his first book, so when I found out that he was writing it, as soon as I could read it, he gave me a copy, and I took it to school. I think I got it taken away a few times because I just won't put it down. But I'd recommend that book just because the idea behind it is changing your life from a Tin Man to an Iron Man. And as you read the book, it really defines what that means and stuff. So I'd have to recommend that book because there's stories so he'll give a story and then a lesson at the end and then action steps to it. So it's all right there through each chapter, and it's straightforward and it's interesting and it's modern, because a lot of the books we have to read for school, I don't know about anyone else watching, but we get really old books that are difficult to read. So, but this one is really straightforward and modern. So that's why I love it so much, regardless of the fact that it was written by my dad. But it's just, he's got really good stories and different perspectives on things. So that's what I'd have to recommend.
So Tin Man to Iron Man, there's your book recommendation. So we're coming down to the last couple of questions. And again, this is a series that we do. We try and do it every 3 weeks where we're bringing someone like Jordan Swanson in front of you so that we can ask him some candid questions. We can ask him some questions of what he's been successful at. And we do this all the time, every 3 weeks. You can look to our YouTube site when it comes to Kids Leading Today.edge, and you're going to see segments of this interview that we're just finishing up. And you can get on there pretty soon. We're going to have it. So whenever the next interview is, I'm going to tell you right now, the next interview is going to be May 28th. May 28th. We understand that that's Memorial Weekend, but the cool thing about doing this live and doing it from Zoom, you can carry it wherever you have your phone, wherever you have your iPad, wherever you have one of those things. We're going to do Memorial Day special where we're going to bring in somebody from the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Marines, and we're going to have them in a panel discussion so that you guys can ask those questions. We know as a teenager that there's some interest in there, and maybe you may not feel like there's a lot of interest there until you listen to this interview. We're going to ask them some of those cool questions. Kind of what is it like? What is the living there? So that's May 30th at 4 o'clock. And if you can't be by your computer, grab your phone. Grab anything that will bring it up, because the same little button on Zoom will bring up this interview. So as we end this, number one, Jordan, you're awesome. Man, it's been so good listening to you. I have pages of notes of all the different things that you said that I'll put into my life. In the years that I'm the same age as your dad, so it's like talking to my son, but I'm gaining so many different things from you. So that's the coolest part, that we get a chance to do this. All right. So, well, I don't know how much time. I think we got 3 minutes, so I'll just end with this question. All right. What could you tell to someone your age when it comes to looking at the way the climate is in America, the way that you see? What is some advice you can leave them with? So that they can go out and be more bold in what they do and move forward.
Some advice, okay. I think that it can be very overwhelming to just and feel as if what you want to do, if it's not the biggest and greatest thing in the world, that it's not doing much, and that can be overwhelming. And when I say that, I mean, we've got like 3 minutes, so I'll make this fast. But there's so many people doing so many things. It kind of seems like if you do one thing, what's that going to change? There's so many people doing this over there and everything. So I think I think once you find your niche of what you want to stand for, then you just find that, and then you just go with it and forget anyone else doing what they're doing. Just find what you want to do, and then you do it, and then sooner or later, if you stick to it, then you'll just come out on top. But obviously that plays a big role in the boldness, because you can't just, it can be very tough because people have already developed this high standard for what you're doing. People are already doing it, but you might have different perspective. So you just got to keep at it. And then over time, if what you have is a good idea, it'll build and grow and grow and grow before you know it, you'll be right up with them, and then maybe exceeding them, which would be very, very relevant and fond of you. But I think once you figure out what you want to do, you just gotta commit and just don't quit until you succeed at it. But
that is awesome.
Okay, I need one thing. When I say don't quit till you succeed, maybe what you were doing wasn't meant to succeed, but don't quit at the first sign of failure. Like when you were given that little promo video, Orrin Woodward, I was watching it, he said, don't be afraid, don't be scared of failure. And when he said that, it caught my attention. And it's true, because that's what teaches you. It builds your character. It teaches you, because once you fail, no one likes to fail. And once you do, you really learn from it, and it shows who you really are in those times. But if you fail at something and it was for some strange circumstance, then try it again. But until you come to the conclusion that it just wasn't meant to happen and it wasn't your niche, that's when you have to give it up and just find another thing to do. But again, it's really circumstantial to figure out when and where you need to just stand back and say, okay, this just can't happen. It's just not working. So it goes back to that like thing about wisdom we were saying. You just have to know when you need to stop, or when you need to just put that aside and keep going.
Jordan, you are amazing, and thank you so much for taking your time away from your Sunday, taking your time for this interview, and to help kids, to help individuals, to help adults understand the idea of boldness. So if it was your first time being on these interviews, like it was Jordan's first time being, well, we had him a little bit in an interview from his dad. This was an amazing blessing in our life, and hopefully in your life too, as you listen to those great principles that Jordan just shared with us. So we hope to see you again on May 30th when we do our next interview, where we're going to be bringing in the armed forces, and we're going to be celebrating Memorial Day and talking a little bit. And Jordan, can I ask you a real quick thing? Can we have you back on this somewhere down in the future? Because we know that as you go out and be bold, you're going to grow. And I'm going to tell you a little secret there, Mr. Jordan. You said that as you get bold, you may even be better than those convictions before. I think I see a Swanson that's going to be better than the Swanson that I know really well, because he's learning from that mentor, and the mentor always wants their person to move greater than themselves. So, Jordan, you have been an absolute blessing. Can we count on you for someday down the road again?
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Well, have a great evening. For those of you guys, check into the main homepage.com when it comes to the Edge audio series, because we want you to have this over and over, and then plug into our website when it comes to kidsleadingtoday.edge, when it comes to our YouTube site, and you get a lot more of this. God bless everybody. Have a great evening.